Hey, it's Baz, filmmaker, dad, and the guy behind 20 Minute Gamer. As part of my ongoing mission to revisit the entire Far Cry series and judge each one by its opening 20 minutes, I'm now jumping back into Far Cry 2, and this time I'm playing it on Windows via Steam. Originally I played it on the Xbox 360, and honestly, it's one of those titles that's lodged itself pretty much firmly in my memory. It's strange, I wouldn't instinctively call it a retro game really, but it has been around for a while now. Despite that, I still remember it feeling incredibly mature at the time, like I'd suddenly graduated from cartoonish shooters to something that felt more like Apocalypse Now the game. It was dark, intense and gritty. In my head, it still stands as my favourite Far Cry. I've played all 6 main entries, and this is the one I always come back to when someone asks me which one's the best. So today we're going to see if it holds up, if the opening 20 minutes still carry the weight and atmosphere that made this game so iconic for me back in the day. Far Cry 2 was developed by Ubisoft Montreal and released in 2008. It marked a massive shift in tone and mechanics from the first game, moving away from the sci-fi experiments and tropical islands and diving deep into a more grounded, politically charged African setting. It's widely seen as the bridge between the early chaos of the original and the blockbuster polish of Far Cry 3. Ubisoft used their then-new Junior engine, which brought with it dynamic fire propagation, day-to-night cycles, and heavy emphasis on player-driven narrative. The goal was realism and suffering, and they really leaned into that. Story. The first 20 minutes of Far Cry 2 are what I can only describe as a slow burn, or maybe a slow taxi ride. The opening is almost entirely cinematic, even though you technically have camera control, and while that can build immersion, it also eats up a good chunk of your playtime. My first 11 minutes were spent just watching events unfold. You arrive in a car from the airport, doing a long scenic drive as your driver offers bits of exposition. You can look around, but you're not doing much beyond sightseeing, and no, you can't skip any of it. Despite the pacing, it's an effective way to ground you in the world. It reminds me of stories that begin with someone arriving in a new country. You feel like a stranger being pulled into a conflict you don't understand yet. Eventually you meet a man who seems very agitated, and it turns out he's the Jackal, the game's main antagonist. He thinks you're there to kill him, which is a little bit awkward, but the game doesn't really give you many clear answers right away, and you're left wondering what your purpose really is. Then things escalate. You collapse from malaria, there's a firefight at your hotel, and you're rescued by a rebel who essentially forces you into a new mission. By the end of 20 minutes, I'd fixed a car, liberated a base, and rescued a hostage, who then tells me we're apparently best mates now. There's a lot happening here, but it's not always clear which direction the story has gone. It's moody, dark, and immersive, but maybe a bit heavy-handed in the delivery. The unskippable cutscenes feel a little bit outdated in 2025, and they take away from precious gameplay time in a review like this. Score, 6 out of 10. Controls. This is fairly standard FPS territory at first glance. WASD for movement, right-click to aim, R to reload, and so on. But once you start digging in, the systems laid beneath the surface reveal something much more interesting. For example, the map isn't just an overlay, it's an actual object that you pull out and look at in real time in-game. That might sound small, but it's a brilliant immersive touch, and it's something that I still wish more games did. When you're driving, you can glance at your physical GPS or hold the map in one hand. There's a real sense of being in the world, not navigating the UI, but surviving moment to moment. You also juggle your weapons, your health kits, and even your mobile phone, which adds a little bit of chaos, especially early on. It can feel overwhelming in the first 20 minutes, but I'm confident that most players would adapt quickly. The map system alone for me is a standout mechanic. It might not appeal to everyone, but I love it. Score, 9 out of 10. Atmosphere.
No offense. These militia, they come into our country, steal everything, and they leave us nothing.
If Far Cry 2 nails anything, it's the atmosphere. The game absolutely oozes grit. From the moment you land, everything from the dusty visuals to the oppressive soundtrack work together to plunge you into a war-torn hellhole. There's no hand-holding, just you, a flickering hotel fan, and a growing sense of unease. The way the game forces you to soak in its setting during the initial taxi ride, the brutality of the combat, the gruesome self-healing animations, it all builds a world that feels alive and completely uncaring. There's even that malaria mechanic, which has your screen flash and blur as your character suffers attacks. Immersion is the name of the game here, and this one delivers in spades. The only thing that took me out of it, some brief tutorial pop-ups, which are fine I guess, and one utterly hilarious glitch, which I'll cover shortly. Score, 9 out of 10. Music and sound. Let's split this into voice acting, effects, and music. The voice acting is surprisingly solid. It's not going to win any awards, but it is believable. The actors feel authentic, and I appreciate the effort to cast voices that reflect the characters' nationalities. The Jackal's delivery is still a little bit odd. He sort of mumbles in a way that doesn't quite fit the menace he's supposed to project. Still, it's serviceable.
Life itself is will to power. Nothing else matters. So long.
Sound effects are excellent. From the ambient jungle sounds to the thunder of distant gunfire, everything has weight. Explosions pack a punch, and wildlife chatter helps sell the idea that this is a real, living place.
Nobody follows the rules anymore.
As for music, it's very ambient and tribal, perfectly matched to the environment. You get these subtle beats and lonely string drones that make you feel isolated, always one step away from danger. The only real issue I had was with audio placement. NPCs speaking from the far right or left channels when they're standing directly in front of me. It made my conversations a little awkward and forced me to stare straight at people, which isn't my natural playstyle. Score, 7 out of 10. Graphics and style. Visually, Far Cry 2 still holds up surprisingly well, largely because it commits fully to a distinct visual style. The colour palette is washed out and gritty, but it fits the tone perfectly. The trees, the shadows, the dirt, it all looks fantastic, especially when you consider this game came out in 2008. There's a realism to the environments that makes it feel lived in. Character models and weapons are still solid, and those lighting effects during malaria attacks or injuries really help convey intensity. But, and this is a big but, I encountered one bizarre glitch that broke the immersion in the funniest way. Several characters were bouncing up and down like they were on trampolines. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. Then I saw a whole armed group of men boinging around like they were queuing for a bouncy castle. It was quite hilarious, but obviously not intended. So yes, strong visuals, but maybe a few quirks if you're playing on modern hardware.
Where are you headed?
Score, 7 out of 10. Gameplay. This is where things get complicated. The first half of your 20 minutes, you're pretty much locked into watching. The second half, explosions, gunfights, car repairs, hostage rescues, total chaos in the best way. Once you get control, the game throws everything at you at once. You can drive, shoot, switch between tools, and decide how to tackle your objectives. I went full Michael Bay and used a rocket launcher to turn an enemy outpost into a fireball buffet. It was glorious. The variety is already on show, and I know from personal experience that the full game does continue that trend. But for a format like mine, where I'm specifically judging those first 20 minutes, the slow start has to hurt the score a little bit. Gameplay is great once it kicks in, it just takes a little while to get there. Score, 7 out of 10. The standout moment for me was definitely unleashing absolute mayhem on an enemy base with a rocket launcher from a cliffside. No sneaking, no plans, just pure explosive catharsis. It reminded me exactly why this game stuck with me. So, is this worth 20 minutes? If you can get through the opening cutscene heavy intro, and you're the sort of player who appreciates a dark, immersive and deliberately paced experience, then Far Cry 2 is absolutely worth your time. It doesn't hand you the fun straight away, but once it does, it delivers in a gritty, explosive style. It's a game that feels like it has something to say still. It's moody, atmospheric, and often unforgiving. But even today in 2025, there's nothing quite like it. If you're curious how Far Cry evolved from weird sci-fi chaos into open world freedom, then this is actually the turning point, and it still deserves your attention. Final score, 8 out of 10. What's your favourite Far Cry game? Did you play this one back in the day, or are you just discovering it now? Have you ever seen people bouncing around like they're on a trampoline, or was that just my bad luck? I'd ask anybody watching this video to also visit my review of the first Far Cry game and see how much the gameplay has changed and how much the atmosphere and mood and everything has changed from that game to this one. People often cite Far Cry 3 as the one that set the standard for the games, and in many ways it did, but Far Cry 2 really did set it on the right path. I don't think any other game in the series comes as close as far as immersion is concerned, and there's just so much implemented in this one that makes it stand out not just in the Far Cry series, but as a game overall. And if you're anything like me, you don't have hours and hours to sink into every game. That's why I test whether a game can hook you in just those first 20 minutes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.